Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Brewnomics interview series at the lounge at the end of the universe. One day we might come up with a shorter name for that, but not today. I'm Jerry.
I'm Phalla.
And we have our special guest from White Dog Brewing, Dan.
I'm Dan.
You want to introduce yourself real quick, Dan?
I'm Dan. I'm one of the owners over at White Dog Brewing.
There we go. Excellent. Let's get into it. But first, we came here to drink some beer, didn't we? Well, and talk to Dan about White Dog, but it'd probably be fun without beer, but beer makes everything better, huh? First offering is we got the Blood Orange Hefeweizen. What can you tell us about this beer, Dan?
Blood Orange Hef, it's one of our biggest movers. It's an awesome summer beer. So it's a light German-style Hef with actual blood orange puree in it. Yep, all natural flavors added. We don't use any kind of fining agents, no artificial flavors, nothing like that. Any of our fruited beers are all actual fruit in them.
I appreciate that.
There you go.
Because that's not always the case. I love this beer. I've had this beer a lot. It's often inside my fridge. I am a sucker for a good, real blood orange flavor. I love it.
It's actually my favorite beer from you guys.
Awesome.
This and the Oktoberfest.
I do. I love Marzens. I love all kinds of German styles.
Yeah.
So
We
for sure.
had, I don't think it was last year, maybe the year before, but like a contest to find the best Oktoberfest, and you guys won.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's
at
great
least
to hear.
according to Brewnomics, anyways.
Nice. It's the only one that matters. of
Ain't
course.
that he
Check it
said.
out.
It's true. Yeah, I love this beer. It's good. It's a Hefeweizen. It's got that nice wheatness to it, a little bit of fluffiness to it, but not overly, which can happen with Hefeweizen. Sometimes they get too wheaty.
Wheaty.
But this one does. I like you saying it's good summer beer because it is crisp. It is refreshing. And it's at 5%, so you can drink quite a bit of them.
Yeah, huge one in draft for us, especially in the summertime. And then cans, it's one of our most popular too.
Makes perfect sense. Shall we?
Cheers.
Cheers.
sir. COVID toast.
All right, so what's kind of your background, your history? What did you do before White Dog?
So, very random. Prior to this, I was actually a college rifle shooting coach.
What?
Yeah, so really strange. So me, my wife, my partner Troy, we all actually met on a college rifle team in Fairbanks, Alaska. So rifle shooting it's an Olympic sport, and it's also a collegiate sport, just like basketball, football, soccer, anything like that. So we all met on the team in Alaska at UAF, University of Alaska Fairbanks, and after shooting in college, I went on to shoot professionally for the U.S. shooting team for a number of years after that. Lived at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, traveled the world shooting rifle competitions all over the place. And then when I retired from shooting, I went back to take the coaching job at the university there in Alaska. And I was there for 11 years until moving here to Boise to start a brewery.
That's awesome. So you're just basically Mark Wahlberg and shooter.
Yeah, right?
But better, right?
Yep.
Dude, I'm amazed by that story.
Yeah, my whole life has been beer and guns. It's been pretty fun. Not bad.
That's American as shit.
Yeah, very much.
Put that on
Very
your
much.
family crest, man.
Yeah.
God, baby. Hell yeah, I love it. That's badass. How colleges have competitive rifle shooting teams?
So at the back in the 80s, it was actually huge. Started all kind of after World War II. They wanted to train people better.
Makes sense.
To be better shooters. And then so up until about World War II, there was over 300 colleges throughout the university that had shooting programs. After the 80s, with a lot of the EPA regs with lead and stuff like that, and then some of the other political stuff, it kind of shrunk down. Between the different levels, I think there was somewhere around 50 when we were in college shooting. So, and it's a lot of the big name schools that you think of, UTEP, so Texas El Paso, Texas Christian, all of the military academies, University of Kentucky, Ohio State, Ole Miss. So a lot of big name schools that have them.
That's so cool.
I'm so impressed and turned on right now. Yeah. Aside from him being handsome, obviously.
True. That is definitely true.
Kind of a weird and random background for
That's
sure.
a great.
That's awesome.
Sure, but awesome though. I mean, it's much better to have a weird and random background than a story we've all heard before. All right, so you moved from Alaska. Are you from Alaska?
Born and raised in Colorado. Went
Okay.
to Alaska to go to college, and then was up there for almost 20 years before
Right on.
coming down here.
You look like you're my age.
I
Are you
know.
kidding me? Oh, well,
Yeah.
someone's age better. So what was the trigger that decided to make you go, you know what?
Trigger.
Trigger.
Yeah, just
Just see what I did there? I did. Damn, he's good. That brought you to Boise, though, because obviously it was to start a brewery, but I'm sure you didn't just, like, snap out of bed one morning, like, all right, let's go to Idaho, make some beer.
Actually, it was pretty close to that.
Yeah?
Yeah, so weird, totally random. The whole brewery, the whole White Dog, everything is weird and random like that. Troy and I's background has always been like that. Just our whole lives have been these weird, random steps. So kind of from the beginning with White Dog, started in Bozeman, Montana. So my two partners, Troy and Joe, they're from Wyoming originally. So Troy ended up in Alaska going to school. Well, don't take that.
Go get 2 beers. This man drinks.
That's just mean to steal beer.
That's true.
Troy ended up in Alaska to go to school up there. Joe ended up in Montana in Bozeman. After all of our lives doing their things, Joe was working on a construction project, building out a 100-year-old building in downtown Bozeman, right on Main Street, for a distillery. And they were cutting the building and dividing the building in half. The distillery was going to be on one side. And the distillery owner said, man, this would be really cool if we partnered up with a brewery next door. Joe said, well, me and my brother Troy brew. So 7 or 8 years prior to that, Joe's lady friend JC had gotten them a homebrew kit, just a normal stovetop homebrew kit. They brewed on it once in the garage and then promptly got kicked out of the house. So then they brewed on it once in the garage, once in the house, once in the garage, and then Troy, who comes out of the oil and gas industry, kind of biochem, chemistry, stuff like that, he said, this is nuts. I can't control this like I want to. I can't brew consistent beer, so he bought a commercial pilot system, set it up in the garage, and that's what they brewed on. So after 2 home brews, they went to a commercial pilot system. And they brewed on a pilot system for 7 or 8 years, making a lot of beer for friends, birthdays, weddings, all kinds of stuff. And so fast forward 7 or 8 years, Joe is working the construction project. He calls Troy and says, hey, these guys want to open a brewery. Troy flew up from Texas. They looked at the space, signed a lease, and started construction to open a brewery in Bozeman. That weird and random. Fast forward 2 years, Troy is taking a cruise over here to Boise. So Joe and JC, so Joe is Troy's brother. JC's his lady friend. Her sister lives here in town. So Joe's in-laws. So Troy's just going to take a drive over to Boise, say hi to the in-laws. And the growler guy that we buy our growlers from, he says, hey, if you guys ever need a commercial real estate agent in Boise, let me know. That's what my brother-in-law does over there. Troy's like, why the hell would I ever need a commercial real estate agent in Boise? So he drives over here. They park in the parking lot of where we're at. 3 days prior to that, the business that was in there, Grind Modern Burger, had closed. So there's nothing in the space. So they're parked in the parking lot. Jason, the in-law, he says, hey, do you remember Susie or whatever her name was from high school? She used to work in this place. Troy said, well, what was it? He said, well, it used to be a burger place and a brewery. He says, well, no shit. So he goes over and he looks in the windows. All the brew tanks are still in there. Everything's still in there. So this is on Saturday night. So on Sunday, He says, huh. So he calls up Growler guy and he says, hey, what's your brother-in-law's name? I might need a commercial real estate agent. Calls me. I happen to be in New Zealand at the time. So I'm flying back over. When I hit LAX, there's a message on my phone from Troy. And I was like, I haven't talked to Troy in a while. We had always met up all over the country going on hunting trips and getting together to do stuff after college, but always wanted to go into business together, but never knew what to do. So he calls me. I got a message from him, so I call him back in the airport, and he's like, hey, what do you think about moving to Boise and starting a second location? I was like, I don't know. Sounds kind of cool. So he calls on Monday, calls the real estate agent. He tracks down the building owner. Building owner says, I'm leaving for 6 weeks to go to Europe. If you guys want to look at the place, call my office, get the keys. You can have a look in it. So Troy drove back over the next weekend, Skyped me, did a little video walkthrough of the whole place. About a month later, my wife and I flew down to check out Boise, see if we liked it. Her dad actually lives in Emmett. So he spends the winters in Emmett and the summers in Alaska, because that's where she's from. Yeah, weird. Again, weird and random, right? And so we're like, Boise can't be that bad. So we flew down. We went to Bozeman, checked out Bozeman, drove to Boise, looked at Boise, did all the market research and demographics, signed a lease on the building, and about 2 months later, I quit my job and moved to Boise from Alaska.
Hell yeah.
So 11 months later is when we got open after the construction. So weird. Again, weird, completely random, never planned, just sounded like something cool to do.
It sounds like everything just fell into place, though, you know? Like, it was most like serendipitous like story to have. Like, we're doing this, and it's happening, and now we're doing it.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, it's, they say a lot of times that, luck is success and opportunity at the right times, and knowing and being able to take advantage of that. And so that was kind of a huge part of it was the right opportunity at the right time, and we were very fortunate. My wife and I both very fortunate in the spot in our careers where we were in our lives to be able to kind of take that chance and make a jump and take advantage of a spot that was already built out that has so much history here in the state.
There's a lot of history
which
in that
we'll get into a little bit later, right? And so, it was just a lot of dumb luck and just being willing to take that jump and take a leap into something that a lot of people wouldn't have maybe, but we were just in a good position to be able to do it.
And look at you now.
Yeah.
I love that story.
You want to grab that beer? There we go.
Oh, he's being a gentleman.
Look at that. Time for another beer. After that, man, that's awesome. Okay, so this offering is your blonde ale. I absolutely love this label. I like a lot of the labels that kind of, it's got a mix somehow between rustic and pinup. And that is amazing. I've always appreciated the hell out of that. So nice blonde ale coming in at 5.2%. What can you tell us about this one?
Blonde ale, it's so still on that lighter beer style. It's got just a little bit of bitterness to it. So it's got a touch of flavor, touch of bite to it without being too overpowering. Kind of one of my go-tos if I'm grabbing something in the cooler as I'm walking out. It's got just enough to it without being overpowering.
Incredibly sessionable. It's a good summer beer. It's so hot outside right now, so I just love just putting this in my mouth. Can I ask you a question about your name, man? Where did the name White Dog come from?
White Dog. So the White Dog. So when we got going in 2014, there was probably somewhere around 5,500, 6,000 breweries around. And so Troy and Joe had put together a list with the artist. Her name is Lonnie. So that's who does all of our pinup artwork and branding and logos. And
Hi,
everything.
Lonnie.
You kick ass, Lonnie.
She goes by the name The Whiskey Ginger. So she's out of Bozeman. That's her trade name. She's a full artist. That's what she does. So they were sitting there, and they had put together a list of like 100 names. And they started running through the patent and trademark office looking because they wanted to trademark the name. and everything was taken. Just, super, super hard to find something. And so they were just go and check it, check it. Nothing. Joe, the brother, he's got a yellow lab. She's kind of a goofy dog. Her name is Cammy. She's a very white yellow lab. And so she came over, jumped up on Joe, and Joe said, "Oh, you're such a pretty little white dog." And they all kind of looked at each other, and they're like, "White dog? Huh." It was open. And that's how the name White Dog came to be.
More weird and random.
Yep.
Look at that.
And very much, though, that all the names, we wanted a very generic name. We wanted something that could be identifiable to everybody, that wasn't location specific, right? We didn't want to be called Montana Brewery, because then you can't go outside of Montana, right? So we wanted something, no matter where we went, who we talked to, what demographic was out there, men, women, country, city, whatever it was, they could identify with the name. And so that's something like White Dog. Everybody loves dogs. Well, everybody should love dogs.
All the good people do.
Yeah. So, so it really worked, and that's how the name came about. So her name is Cammy. So Cammy the White Dog.
I love it. That's amazing. Oh shit! I had a follow up and I just spaced it. Oh well.
I'll come back to you.
Probably.
Or it went away. It'll be fine.
So, yeah, we have another question here, and I'm going to kind of lead that into two questions. One, what's the challenges of running two breweries? Do you have them kind of separate, but... Nope, I'm not going to say that one. Are they ran differently with sort of trust in each one? Do you... Same people in charge of both one, but different or in separate locations, I guess? What's that about?
So we did. So when we opened up Boise, so I was here. I did all the construction and the build out on the space, and then about a month before we got open, Troy moved here. So Troy came here to be the brewer, and Joe stayed in Bozeman to brew there. So the two brothers are the brewers, and we really. We like having an owner be the brewer, because then you're not worried about losing your brewer to somebody else.
Very true.
Which is pretty. You see that a lot. Right?
All the time.
And so it was that was one of the things that we tried to keep. Obviously, you can't keep that forever, and so you're always trying to train up somebody to be there that you can trust and do that. But so at that point, we had the two owners being the two brewers, and so the two locations ran separately. They have different demographics, different markets, different beers, different everything. And we didn't cross anything. So everything that was made in Bozeman stayed in Montana, and everything that was made in Boise stayed in Idaho.
Very cool.
We sold the Bozeman location. So Boise is 3 times the size of Bozeman. Bozeman was very small, and it's much cheaper to operate in Idaho.
Really?
Than what it is in Montana. It's over a third cheaper for us to operate here than what it was over there.
Wow.
Crazy. Just shipping is more expensive, rent's more expensive, power's more expensive, water's more expensive, everything.
Is that because it's a little more isolated?
Yeah, I think it's just more remote. And Bozeman is like Sun Valley. It's high dollar, it's high rent, everything's expensive in Bozeman now.
Fair.
So with this one being 3 times the size, we just said, hey, let's put our eggs in the basket there, and let's grow this one. We can make more beer here. So if we want to back into Montana, we can, and we already have that footprint. We already have that following.
Is it still White Dog in Montana?
Nope.
Or are they gonna?
So we sold it to the neighbor. We sold it to the distiller.
Cool.
The guy who started all of this, right? So we sold it to him, and he expanded over into that space. Took out some of the seating, put in a little kitchen so that he can have food.
Okay.
Increased seating, stuff like that. So now he brews his own beers just for in-house use. So he's got the brewery still in the back, but took over the seating and
Cool.
a little food. So
Is there plans for a second location in Idaho? Because I know you can have 2 tap rooms here,
you can.
which also is weird to me that you can only have 2 tap rooms here. But I don't make the rules. Maybe.
With only 2 locations being allowed, we're always looking. but nothing's settled yet, right?
Sure.
We're being very careful and very targeted in where that's going to go. We're already downtown, right? So you see some of the other brewers opening up second locations downtown and trying to get downtown in that foot traffic area and stuff. Since we're already down here, we're looking out. You know, do we want to go into Meridian where there's kind of a hole? Do we want to go out into Star that's growing? Would you go out into Caldwell, Cuna? I don't know. I mean, we don't know. We're looking, we're watching.
Well, even the Magic Valley out in Twin Falls, they're
You've-
blowing up so much
Yeah,
there.
going up to Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah.
You know, who knows? There's all kinds of opportunities, and we get a lot of opportunities that come our way. We're just being very patient in making a final decision on where we do that. Nothing planned yet, though.
So after all the weird and random, we're like, make sure the right one's the next move.
The next one, I'm sure, will be just as weird and random. We're just waiting for it to come along. It hasn't hit us yet, so yeah.
All right, well, we look forward to what the future has to hold. More beer. This is a beer that I have recently been buying the heck out of. However, not the Nitro version. So I'm excited to try the difference here. This is the Nitro Vanilla Cream Ale coming in at 6%.
So we've got 2 Nitro beers. We've got the Vanilla Cream Ale and the Irish Stout. We always say Troy is kind of a mad scientist. It's kind of funny. He literally has his OChem book sitting on the shelf back there, and he loves diving into the science and the chemistry on everything. And so he figured out a way to do a Nitro beer in a can without a widget. So it's a widgetless Nitro can.
For those that don't know what a widget is a little plastic agitator that you'd put in there and shake up, and it kind of keeps the nitrous going, correct?
Yeah, so it's attached to the bottom of the can, and it has when you pop the can, going into all the weird science, the pressure differential pulls through the widget, which goes through a tiny screen which blows all of the CO2 out of solution, which creates that very smooth, creamy Nitro mouthfeel and taste. So
I love the nerd shit. I think
yeah,
that's so
do you
cool.
do you want the nerdiness behind Nitro?
Yeah, we're
Spill
here
it out.
to educate people about what's going on. So,
So a Nitro beer, there is no nitrogen in beer.
okay.
Nitrogen is not soluble in water.
Okay.
So what it is, but at a very small amount, much less than CO2.
Sure.
So what a Nitro beer is essentially it's a half carbonated beer. So if you're going to get the Nitro Vanilla Cream versus the regular Vanilla Cream on CO2, it's got half the carbonation in it that the regular would. Then when you go through, let's say, a Nitro handle at a bar, the Nitro
You have that
handle,
little rubber.
yep. So it's got a stem on it, and it's got a screen in there. So they call it a Nitro beer because it has a nitrogen blanket on the top, and that's what it's holding. What little CO2 there is in there without over carbonating it. If you were to put head pressure with CO2, it would absorb all that extra CO2, and it would just turn it into another carbonated beer. So it's got a nitrogen pressure head on it, which is just pushing the beer through the system. Once it hits that little screen in there, it blows all that CO2 out of solution. So the nitro bubbles that fall, those are CO2 bubbles. But they're so small that the surface area is less. The bubble is heavier than the liquid, so it falls to the bottom of the glass. In a normal beer, the big CO2 bubbles are big, so they rise in the liquid. So the small CO2 bubbles fall down the side of the glass, go back up the middle, and fall down the side of a glass. So you always put a Nitro beer in a pint glass, in a straight-walled glass, so that it falls and comes back up and falls and comes back up. So it's a flat beer is all that it is. You're blowing all it out. CO2 has bitterness. It makes bubbles, so it makes it lighter in your mouth. The mouthfeel gets very light. So a nitro beer, if you think about how creamy and smooth it is, it's because it is completely blowing all of that CO2 out of it. And it's a flat, creamy beer.
That's amazing.
And so
that makes so much sense. I didn't know the actual difference behind it,
Yeah.
but it really makes a lot of sense because I've talked to a brewer, I won't say who it is on this one, but doesn't like to carbonate his beer because he wants it to be a nice, flavorful, kind of creamy experience.
Yeah, so you can, as a brewer, you can mess with carbonation levels to change that mouthfeel. So if you think about Bud Light or Coors Light or Corona,
I try not to.
it's so it's carbed much higher. Any of your seltzers, things like that, they are carbed much higher to make them very light in the mouth. If you bring that carb level down, it makes it more creamy and thick.
And
so you
easier
can
to
engineer
chug.
that. Very much, yeah.
Because the
then you don't have the
carbonation makes it
bubbles.
hard to take.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
I think White Dog should do like their own magic school bus for like beer.
That's,
The way you described that is the way I just saw it. I was like, this is what I want to see right now.
Yeah.
That was
Oh.
phenomenal.
You get Troy going on all the science. You get to him started on hazies and all kind of the chemistry and the stuff that's going on behind beers. It's
Imagine
pretty
the animation,
impressive.
just like people drinking, they shrink down to a bus and you just go into the beer.
That would be, dude, that'd be a lot of
Oh,
fun.
it'd be awesome, for
Well,
sure.
cheers to that. I'm excited to try
go.
the
Cheers.
Nitro one.
Now, to me, this smells different
Shit,
from
it's
when it comes from
better.
the can. Is that?
So on the nitros, when you do the next one, when you do the Irish Stout, so on these beers, what you want to do is shake it. Yep. So totally counterintuitive from what you would think with a CO2 beer. Yep. I'll do it for you. I'll do it for you if you want. So you take the nitro cans, you shake it, and that will burst and it'll bring all that CO2 out. Then you pour it and you want to glug it into the glass. That will create that nitro bubbling that you see out of a thing. So like I say, Troy figured out a way to do it without having a widget, and then you'll feel it. So it just stopped shaking, right? Okay. Crack it open. Don't ease it open. Just crack it open as quick as you can.
God, I wish people could see what was
Yep.
happening.
And then glug it into each of them. And so now if you watch the bubbles, they'll all be doing that little nitro
The little
swirl
dance.
thing.
For those that can't see this, we're bringing it over. I'll go and get one of these myself and make a little how-to video on this just for White Dog.
Yeah.
Because that's super cool, and I
Yep.
think
Baller.
So this still had some of the CO2 in it. So you still had a little bit of that bite because it didn't get shaken. So
okay.
when you shake it, no, you're good. Absolutely. So now that will have that super creamy, thick, very small bubbled nitro head on it versus a CO2 that has very big fluffy bubbles on it.
interesting. Man,
Yeah.
I love learning about this stuff. That's so cool. I love it. Like, we're always beer, definitely not nerds, enthusiasts. I think we're craft beer enthusiasts just trying to hide our alcoholism, really. But a lot of people come to us and ask questions, in a direction of beer, and we can kind of point them that. But then they'll ask certain questions. They're like, okay, what's the difference between a regular beer and a nitro? And I'm like,
Yeah, most people think that it's just nitrogen infused.
yes. I had no idea. Like,
One's
there's
on WWE.
actually not any.
Yeah, right?
So that's really cool, and that's a super simplified way to see it. I love the Magic School Bus thing. We got to make that happen.
Yeah. And the nitro beers, they're designed. If you've ever had a cask ale, the old school cask ale with a beer pump, that is the original nitro beer. You think about the old world styles when they had the cask sitting on the bar top, in old England. A nitro beer is just meant to duplicate what old world beer would have been like, because it would have been relatively flat. They would have put it through the hand pumps, which would have broken everything out, or it was just straight off the cask with the spigot. So a nitro beer, all it is trying to duplicate or replicate what an old world beer would have tasted like straight out of the cask.
That's so cool.
I love that. Do you like smelling beer? I love smelling beer.
I mean, that's a good indicator of the taste, right?
Yeah. Ask this guy.
I mean, I think in general, I can't imagine, if you were to lose your sense of smell, what that would do to your sense of taste. No, thank you.
I don't know. Ask my wife.
Does she not have a sense of smell?
She has very little smell.
No, I actually know a guy that has legitimately no sense of smell. He cannot smell. He was born that way. Yeah. So he's an EMT, and the poor guy has to go through the worst stuff because they're like, you can't smell it. We can. Oh, and I've always wondered. I need to have that talk with him and see if we can really, like, what's your taste profile like? Because that's got to be BANANAS bananas.
Hey, bro, what's that smell like?
That's just mean.
It smells so good.
So I also was curious because I heard, back to the interview here, about like a future expansion, but within the building, you guys were doing like a kind of a private party room, but then, 2020 happened. What's kind of the idea behind that? What are the plans going forward? How are you utilizing that space?
Yep. No, so we've got it, and we were operating it. So in our building, it's really cool. So we've got the brewery, and then next door we have the Gas Lantern Drinking Company, and it's a wine and cocktail bar, so high-end craft cocktails, stuff like that. Next to that, so it used to be Long Drop Hard Cider.
Rip.
So we took over the Long Drop space when they left, and we turned it into a private space. We call it the boarding room. So kind of a cross between dogs with a boarding house and a fancy business boardroom. So we've got the boarding room, and so we do private parties, comedy shows, paint nights, anything that we don't want to, or private events. We won't shut the brewery tasting room to the public. It's just been one of our standards since we opened that if you show up and it's supposed to be open hours, you should be able to walk in the door. So we won't close to the public. Well, we may set aside parts of the tasting room for you and give you a semi-private event, but if the public comes, they should be able to come in. So we took over the boarding room, and that's our private space. So now we can have comedy shows in there that we don't care about the language.
Sure.
Because we're open to families. We don't really want to have comics in that might not be as sensitive to that.
That's right.
Maybe do a podcast there.
It'd be a great podcast place, actually, because we got all the tap handles and stuff for you. And then we can do private catered events. Dave with Smoke and Time will do custom menu items for people over there. We've got it tied in, so we've got a 75-inch big screen that business meetings can tie into for PowerPoint presentations. All that kind of stuff. So we had it up and running for several months and was just kind of getting really good traction on it until all of this hit. Then we shut it down.
Oh.
We're just now looking at how to get it fired back up, how we want to market that. And now maybe better time than ever to do private events over there where people don't want to go out in public and they want to just have them and their core friends. You're welcome to it. Come on in. Use the space and be back out. So yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah. Birthday parties, fight club, what have you.
Total Fight Club.
Total Fight Club.
We have you sign a release and an extra insurance waiver. Other than that, you're good to go. Golden.
Can't talk about it though.
Yep.
Yeah. How do you find out about it though?
Okay, so back to this beer. I was really curious about that, and I'm sad I missed that because I was at White Dog a few times before everything happened. So I'll have to find a reason for that in one way or the other. This beer, the Nitro, the one that we poured, this is your Irish Stout, is that right? Correct, coming at 6.8%. Man, we're going to get drunk on this one, Paula.
That's a big one.
Yeah. So obviously we got the Nitro aspect of it. I think I've had the regular Irish Stout version, but not the Nitro. So anything extra you want to add about this bad boy?
Just two totally different flavor profiles between your Nitro and your CO2 ones.
And I love that he chose the Stout and the Cream Ale to Nitro because that seems like the clear winning choice to do on those ones.
Yep.
It's kind of the beers that actually sometimes I think are raised up by lowering the carbonation in there.
Yeah.
That's one thing after that one brewer told me. Brewer and brewery gets so much harder to say the more beers you drink.
Brewery.
About the effect of carbonation on taste, and ever since that I've really thought about it, and I think there's some legitimacy to that.
Yeah, and if you think about it, the way because of what happens where it's blowing all that CO2 out, it's blowing all that out. What would it do to an IPA? It would completely blow all of the aroma out of it.
Which would be bad.
So you don't see nitro IPAs very often because it would just go.
I was going to say, on the flip side of that, he also didn't like to heavily carbonate his IPAs.
Exactly.
They weren't the best IPAs, but everything else was typically really good.
And at the same time, if you tried to blow out and do a nitro lager, nobody likes waking up the next morning after a big party and grabbing a flat can of Budweiser and drinking it, right? That's not good either. So, again, lagers aren't the best choices for nitro. And so it fits a beer style. It is very, people play with it, and people will push boundaries with nitros. But generally, you're going to see cream ales, stouts, porters, stuff like that lends themselves well to being flat.
This is a phenomenal beer. I usually try to stay away from stouts when it's, what does my watch say, 94 degrees outside. This would be an exception, though. Maybe the air conditioners finally started to kick in, but it sits pretty light for a stout.
Yeah.
I think. It's got that nice malted roastiness to it on a stout that I like. But yeah, it does not sit heavy at all. Sometimes, like in the summer, I drink a stout and I'm like, no, it's too damn hot outside. Stout was a bad choice. Not this case.
So one of the reasons why we don't enter many beer competitions, GABF, NABA, World Beer Cup, things like that, where they're judged. In those competitions, they judge by style. And so they have a definition of an Irish stout. And it says, in order to be an Irish stout and win a medal in this category, it must follow these guidelines. It must be this color. It must be this ABV. It must have these flavor profiles. Most of our beers don't fit those things. So this beer, the Irish Stout in particular, it is right in between the Irish Stout and the dry Irish Stout category. So we would never win a medal in either of those categories because our beer splits the difference between the two. And that's the way most of our beers are. They push the boundaries without being weird necessarily. And so they're going to be right on the fringe edge of those beer definitions and styles, which is why we don't enter many competitions. We kind of let the customers and we let the public tell us what is a good beer and not, simply because most of our beers don't fit competition guidelines.
But most of your beers are pretty damn good. I'm seeing some sediment in here. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Could just be some of the nitro and how it's breaking out. Could be some chill haze or some protein because it's an unfiltered, right? And so depending on kind of what's in there, just as it sits, and then as you blow that out, it's going to condense some of that stuff in there.
Oh, right on. I think with your particular beers, I think the best way to describe it, it's just drinkable. It's sessionable. You know, you have one, have another, go for another.
Even at 6.8, I could feel myself just like drinking this all of a sudden just be like, oh no. Someone get an Uber.
How did I get drunk?
All right, so do you guys can in-house or do you have somebody do it for you?
Nope. So if you've been into the space, we don't have a lot of room in the back.
I've never been in the back, but
Ew.
as soon as I said it.
Yeah. I totally led you up to that one. It's all right. It's all right. So there's not a lot of free space in the brewery area. Actually, when we moved in, we bumped it out and created an extra 8 feet of space in the back. It was very small in Table Rock days. So we bumped that out. So we don't have room for a canning line. So we still do use the mobile canners, and we love them. It's awesome. We don't have to pay for the maintenance on the machine. We don't have to keep the machine. We don't have to update the machine. They kind of roll in. We do big canning runs, and then they roll back out. And we love it. We've got a good partnership with them. They've done great for us. And we'll continue to use them just because we don't have the space for a canning line.
That makes sense, and if it's a good cost and good relationship, why would you change that?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So, you said one of my, I wouldn't say a trigger word for him, but I love Table Rock Brewing. I absolutely did. It was when I was kind of, in my early 20s really discovering craft beer and how great beer could be. Table Rock they were there for me. It was a solid. I remember they had a red ale, a brown ale that I really liked. You guys still have one of their beers, or two of them on tap, don't you? And I remember the place in between the burger joint, which was good, but, $14 burger, come on now. Without fries? Why didn't you last? They had some of their beer as well, which I think is so cool that even though Table Rock is no longer with us, we still have a few of their beers that we can partake in. So what's kind of how did that happen? Because they're like, that staying power is pretty awesome. You don't usually see a brewery, and I think they went out on their own will. They were just done with it. It wasn't like they went tits up or anything, but they still are present in one way or the other.
Yeah, so Table Rock was the original microbrewery in Idaho. So they opened in 1991. They were open for 25 years. So from 1991 to 2014, Table Rock was around. And they were the iconic family restaurant of Boise. If you grew up in Boise, you grew up at Table Rock. Everybody went to Table Rock, right? And because they were that in that first wave of original breweries, so you had them, you had Highlands Hollow, which used to be Harrison Hollow, right? Sockeye, those were some of the OGs of Idaho brewing. So Table Rock, so all of the equipment is original Table Rock equipment, right? So all the tanks, the brew house, everything like that is all original Table Rock stuff. We've done some modifications to piping and some instrumentation upgrades and stuff like that, but stainless steel. The tanks are the tanks, so
they
we've
don't
been
stain.
able to. No.
That's the rumor, right? Yeah.
So Table Rock again, so still 2014. Went through a couple different owners. Over 25 years, you would figure that. And they were iconic, and they had some great beers. The TD's Nut Brown that you're talking about.
That's the one.
They had the White Bird Wheat Hopzilla.
Yes.
Was their iconic. They were and that beer is still phenomenal today. They were way ahead of their time. Some of their brewers in the day were amazing. So we were very fortunate that the last owners of Table Rock are landlords.
Oh.
So all the equipment is original. So we own all the equipment now. But they are more than willing. They love seeing the tradition brought on. We have the old tap handles. Mm-hmm. We have all the recipes. We have everything. So we still rebrew Table Rock beers periodically because it's cool, because the history is awesome. It's part of the building. The whole building history is amazing. It's cool going back into the 40s and 50s. But the Table Rock history is cool. And so we still have, there was always a Tuesdays at Table Rock crowd. And it was all the professors from the university that used to come over. They still come in on Thursdays, but they're all retired now or heads of the departments or way higher up. So we still get those old Table Rock people. We still all the time have servers or cooks or bus staff or brewers from Table Rock days that still come in and always want to tell us stories and always want to talk about it. And the original brewer, his daughter still comes and still comes in periodically. So it's really cool, the history, and us still being able to be a part of that and brew those old beers. It's actually really hard sometimes because a lot of the old beer recipes that we have are handwritten on paper from like 1992. Some of those grains don't exist anymore.
Oh.
Some of those ingredients and the things that they did are not common brewing practices
Ink
today.
also fades.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, sometimes we have to take 3 or 4 brew records that we find and figure out how to recreate it and Troy will look into it. Why did they do this? Why did they use these? Why did it do this? This grain doesn't even exist anymore. They don't make it. Why did they use it? What was the characteristics? How can we get back to that using modern brewing techniques and modern ingredients? And so we're still able to recreate those old beers, but sometimes it can be a little bit of a challenge. It's kind of fun, kind of a little dive into history sometimes.
So you took all those ingredients in this list and put it on a floppy disk? That's what you're saying?
Very much.
Yeah.
5 1/4 floppy, you know.
A zip tick.
Yep, absolutely.
So that's got to really help to have somebody that truly understands OChem, organic chemistry for those at home, because like I've always told people, if you want to get into brewing, did you enjoy chemistry in high school? No, you're not going to like brewing. So that's pretty cool to have. That's Troy?
That's Troy.
Up your sleeve like that. Yeah, man.
Yeah, he's amazing. He really is.
Modern day alchemist.
Troy and Joe were both amazing brewers in their own right in different ways. Joe made some phenomenal beers, and very much, and then they kind of played off each other, where Joe would brew a phenomenal beer, and then Troy would twist it and flip it, maybe with some different hops, or do something different with it. And so, yeah, both had some great brewing ideas, and a lot of our cores, the blonde, the Scotch ale, the English IPA, those were original beers brewed on the commercial pilot system when they were getting going that we still brew and can today.
That's so cool.
Well, can we talk a little bit about your artwork?
Yep.
Like, how did that come about? And just because, quite honestly, it's amazing and it's fun, and it's very eye-popping and catching. Sure. So throw it out there, man.
Yeah. So the artwork, again, our artist, her name is Lonnie, the Whiskey Ginger.
Oh, Lonnie.
Yep,
Whiskey
Lonnie.
Ginger.
Lonnie's awesome. We love her. So Lonnie, all the girls on the cans and the guys. So we've got 2 guys on the cans on the Hazy, and we've got another one that was originally slated for a beer we were going to call a 5-hop, but we'll probably change it. So we've got the 2 guys, we've got the girls. They're all actual people and actual dogs.
Oh.
Lonnie goes out, does photo shoots with them, and then goes back and does the pinup illustrations just like they would have done back in the 60s.
That's so freaking
That's amazing.
So if you've ever seen our English IPA label, it's a girl with a shotgun shooting a clay pigeon. That's Joe's lady friend, JC.
No way.
Yep.
Ha.
And
That's
so,
pretty gangster.
and that is Cammy the white dog on that label. So these are all actual girls and people. So it's really cool. If you go to the website, on whitedogbrewing.com, you can actually go and look at the stories behind the girls and the dogs.
That's amazing.
And Lonnie does little interviews, so she'll ask the girls and the dogs questions. Yeah, so it's pretty funny. So you can go through them and you can actually see and she's got posted the original photographs and then the pinup illustrations to go with them.
That's amazing. I saw this meme the other day that was Ric Flair wearing a Rolex and an Apple Watch, and it was like, you might be cool, but you'll never be Ric Flair wearing a Rolex and Apple Watch. Cool. You might be cool, but you'll never be an actual pinup model shooting clay pigeons with the dog the brewery was named after.
There you go.
On the beer
There you
label.
go.
Unless
that is
you're on
badass, dude. That's pretty special right there. Well, let's drink another beer, man. My mouth's
I am
so
so
dry
parched
right
right
now.
now.
I'm just
Mhm.
looking at this
This is the
delicious.
Hazy.
I believe this is your Hazy IPA, another one coming in at 6.8%.
This
And
is-
boy, is that hazy.
Oh, it's beautiful.
You want to learn the science behind? There's a lot of people that try to do hazies that can't make them hazy.
Ain't that the like the one we were drinking before this from a brewery I shall not name?
Yeah.
It was like a juicy hazy, and I drank it out of the can, but I poured it at home, and I was like,
Yeah.
haze, please.
When Troy brews a haze, if he can put a flashlight behind it and still see the light,
It ain't hazy.
it ain't hazy enough. Yep. And it will never settle out either. It will always be hazy.
Oh, that is. I have not had this one. I've actually had a variant of all the beers so far because, again,
Yep.
I love White Dog, or as I like to call it, the Caucasian Canine.
Oh, t-shirts, please.
That's awesome.
But this is freaking phenomenal. And I'm one of those, I shit on hazies all the time just because it's like, not this one because this is a real hazy, but the one previously, it's like you said hazy because you wanted to sell it. You didn't actually want to make a hazy, and that frustrates me. Sure. It's like the beer doesn't have to be great, but it has to be what you say it is. That's all I ask. Sure. I appreciate the artistry here.
Yeah, it's really interesting. When the hazies first started coming about here in this area, right? So they started out on the East Coast, and then as they kind of moved across, Troy really took an interest in them because of the chemistry and the science that's going on. And so anytime we do a new beer, he goes into this 2-week history dive into it, and he'll go into where did they come from? What was the original iterations of them? What were the original recipes? So if it was a Czech beer, why? What was the water like in that area? What hops did they have? What grains did they have? Why was that beer made that way? So we looked at, hazies and what made them hazy. People said, oh, it's just an unfiltered IPA. Well, no. All hazies are unfiltered, but not all unfiltered beers are hazies, right? And so you've really got to understand the chemistry behind what's going on. And he spent weeks reading scientific articles and trying to figure out the actual chemistry of what was going on in a true hazy. And so he loves it. He totally nerds out on it. And anytime we're giving tours in the brewery, if it's supposed to be like a 15-minute overall view, I give it. If it's supposed to be a 2-hour homebrew club that wants to know the history and the science, Troy gives it, right? And so he loves going into this stuff and really diving into what is each of the beer styles and what makes a hazy and how to do that. So it's super interesting. Yeah, it's fun. This is our number one seller in the tap room, 2-1 over everything else. It's crazy.
Oh, people love their hazies.
They do. I think it has the best mouthfeel overall of just all the beers we had so far. Has there been like a sibling rivalry between these two? Like a competition? Should you start one up?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I have several.
What siblings don't have
Me
rivalry?
and my family.
Brothers, and it's like, no, yours is better, man.
That's what we
Never
do in
been
my
a
house.
conversation
All right,
we've
it's
had.
like you're awesome. Good
We'll
job.
say that too. You're awesome. I'm gonna be better. But I always lose.
By the way, F you, right? Yeah.
No, I think definitely there's always some healthy competition. But I think they worked well because they were different brewers. They brewed in different ways. They had different interests. And so their ability to play off of each other and have different interests is what kind of made them work really well.
Well, the way you
together.
describe them, they're like Jordan and Pippen. That's like what I'm imagining right now.
Who would win in a fight, Joe or Troy?
Oh, Joe's way bigger than Troy. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wait. That's not even a competition. Not even.
Come to the fight club at the
Troy's
private
wiry.
room.
He's wiry.
Wiry.
Oh, that's awesome, man. This is a good beer. So you brought them up earlier. I want to circle back to it because I think they're phenomenal. I want to know a little bit about your relationship with Smoke and Thyme. Thyme, Thyme. Clever.
Thyme.
You guys love puns. So kind of how's that relationship? Because I think their food's phenomenal. I love their presentation. You get a burger, it comes out on a beautiful slab of wood, not a plate. Kind of tell us about that.
Yeah. Another weird, random thing along all of this. So when I was doing the construction on the building, it was always a restaurant with a brewery in the back. So when it was Table Rock, that's what it was. When it was Grind Modern and POMO, Postmodern Brewers in the back, it was always a restaurant with a brewery in the back. And when we moved in, we said, we want to be a brewery with food. So I demoed out the kitchen. I took out all the old kitchen space, remodeled it. I opened up the tap room. I opened up the brewery. And we wanted to make it so that we could produce beer. We wanted to leverage that equipment. And so when I did that, we said, all right, well, now we need food. I just took out all the kitchen because we needed that for production space. We needed that to store kegs, and we needed all the cooler space that the restaurant was using for kegs and cans. We needed all that. And so we knocked all that out. At the same time, Long Drop was getting going over there, and they wanted food. And then with the two of us in the building, we're like, we need to get somebody in the corner space. So that's when we got Dave to come in and do Gas Lantern Drinking Company, right, with the craft cocktails and wines and stuff like that. So now you've got the cider crowd, the beer crowd, and the wine crowd and cocktail crowd. So you've got 3 completely different demographics coming to the building. And all we had to do is get them into one of the 3 spaces. Because now you come to the brewery and you're like, you go tell all your friends, they're like, I really don't like beer. I'm more of a cider person. Well, right next door is a cider house. Well, I'm kind of a wine person. Right next door is a wine place. So all 3 of us got to going, and then we're like, all right, well, we really want beer, or we really want food to keep people here. You give people food, they're going to buy at least one more drink, right? So you got to have it. Mm-hmm. We didn't like the food truck idea because it's hard to schedule. It's hard, the consistency is very hard for people. Again, you got all the people working downtown that are going to walk over, and if they show up one day for lunch and there's no food truck there, now they're mad and they probably won't come back again.
I've been to places like that where I was promised a food truck and no food truck was had.
Yeah.
Not a happy man.
The angry tweet.
Yeah. So the concept is awesome. There is nothing wrong with it. It's a great pairing between breweries and food trucks. It works amazingly well. We just wanted something a little bit more stable. And we also had bad experiences in Bozeman with food trucks. Mm-hmm. Same thing. The inconsistencies or a menu that didn't match what we wanted for beer drinkers, right? So Dave, who opened up Gas Lantern next door, the wine and cocktail lounge, his background is in food. Huh. That's he's a chef. He's run major restaurants. He's run all of this stuff. So we got talking to him. He's like, well, why don't I just do the food truck? So he shopped. He looked all over the Northwest. He looked all over the country. Finally bought a 40-foot mobile kitchen out of Texas and had it hauled up here because when you put in the 3 different spaces all together, it's 300 seats. That's a major restaurant, right? So it's not a little food truck that's dishing up scoop and serve food. We need 300 seats worth of kitchen space. And so Dave now, who has Gas Lantern, also has the food truck. That's his specialty, is the food side. And so he got this big barbecue trailer out of Texas that came up all covered up with flames and American flags and smokers in the back. And so he had it rewrapped, right?
Dan just went full Fort Worth.
Oh, yeah. Amazing. And so it works awesome now that everything out there is fresh made. All the meat is smoked by Dave. All the bacon is homemade. Everything is
so good.
Oh, it's phenomenal food. And it's perfect for us because I get to run a brewery.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about running a kitchen. I don't want to run a kitchen. I don't know anything about it. Let Dave do the food. That's what he knows. And so they became the building's de facto kitchen without having to run a kitchen. And it works amazingly well because now he can sell into all 3 spaces without moving, and we get the menu that we want. And we get to talk to him and say, we're going to do a menu redo. That sounds like a terrible idea. That is not what beer drinkers want. Mm-hmm. But over in Gas Lantern, he can do fruit and cheese and charcuterie boards. Yeah. How many beer drinkers want to come in and order an Oktoberfest with a fruit and cheese platter? Right?
He would.
Yeah.
He totally would. This guy right here. Yeah. It's falling through and through.
So we're like, we want jerky and peanuts and
I want that too.
So that's where Smoking Time came from. It's this, again, completely random. If we wouldn't have had Dave opening Gas Lantern at the same time, we would not have had Smoking Time.
Interesting.
And so it just works amazingly well. But it has its own challenges. It's not perfect, Right.
Wouldn't be fun if it was.
No. Fun is not the word I would use for it sometimes. We all work extremely well together, but at the same time, it's really hard when I as White Dog, all of us, all collectively, don't have control of every aspect of our business, right? So Dave has control of the trailer. So it takes a lot of communication between us and their staff and our staff and their management and our management to make all this work. That it's not always easy, but it's a phenomenal partnership, and we love it. And his food is amazing. There's literally chefs from all over Boise that come to eat Dave's food.
Oh, I've had it. I believe it.
It's amazing.
I love
stuff.
it.
Yeah.
I fully
Crazy
fully endorse the beer and the beverage. How you feeling, Paul? I kind of got a tinkle.
We can take a tinkle break.
I've heard. As I say, I heard Dan don't take breaks. He's too much.
Dan
of a
don't take
badass.
breaks.
That's because I already tinkled on the floor. You don't have to worry about me.
We are sort of swimming in it right now. I didn't want to say anything. He's a guest.
All right, we're gonna take a quick 3-minute break. We'll be right back.
A 3-minute piss is what's happening.
Oh, it's
It's a 3-minute piss.
I'm gonna time it.
Okay.